While the Roman Emperor Constantine the Great reigned, Christianity began to transition to the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. Historians remain uncertain about Constantine's reasons for favoring Christianity, and theologians and historians have argued about which form of early Christianity he subscribed to. There is no consensus among scholars as to whether he adopted his mother Helena's Christianity in his youth, or encouraged her to convert to the faith himself. Some scholars question whether he should be considered a Christian at all. Constantine saw himself as an emperor of the Christian people. If this made him a Christian is the subjective debate, and he did not receive baptism until shortly before his death. Constantine's decision to cease the persecution of Christians in the Roman Empire was a turning point for early Christianity, sometimes referred to as the triumph of the Church, the peace of the Church, or the Constantinian shift. In 313, Constantine and Licinius issued the Edict of Milan decriminalizing Christian worship. The emperor became a great patron of the Church and set a precedent for the position of the Christian emperor within the Church and the notion of orthodoxy. Christendom, ecumenical councils and the state church of the Roman Empire declared by edict in 380. He is revered as a saint annus apostolis in the Eastern Orthodox Church and Oriental Orthodox Church for his example as a Christian monarch. Before Constantine, the first recorded official persecution of Christians on behalf of the Roman Empire was in AD 64, when, as reported by the Roman historian Tacitus, Emperor Nero attempted to blame Christians for the Great Fire of Rome. According to church tradition, it was during the reign of Nero that Peter and Paul were martyred in Rome. However, modern historians debate whether the Roman government distinguished between Christians and Jews prior to Nerva's modification of the Ficus Judaicus in 96. From which point practicing Jews paid a tax and Christians did not. Christians suffered from sporadic and localized persecutions over a period of 2.5 centuries. Their refusal to participate in imperial cult was considered an act of treason, and was thus punishable by execution. The most widespread official persecution was carried out by Diocletian. During the Great Persecution, the emperor ordered Christian buildings and the homes of Christians torn down and their sacred books collected and burned. Christians were arrested, tortured, mutilated, burned, starved, and condemned to gladiatorial contests to amuse spectators. The Great Persecution officially ended in April 311, when Galerius, senior emperor of the Tetrarchy, issued an Edict of Toleration, which granted Christians the right to practice their religion, though it did not restore any property to them. Constantine, Caesar in the Western Empire, and Licinius, Caesar in the East, also were signatories to the Edict of Toleration. It has been speculated that Galerius, a reversal of his long-standing policy of Christian persecution, has been attributable to one or both of these co-Caesars' conversion. It is possible that Constantine's mother, Helena, exposed him to Christianity. In any case, he was over 42 when he finally declared himself a Christian. Writing to Christians, Constantine made clear that he believed that he owed his successes the protection of that high God alone. Battle of Milvian Bridge. Eusebius of Caesarea and other Christian sources record that Constantine experienced a dramatic event in 312 at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge, after which Constantine claimed the emperorship in the West. According to these sources, Constantine looked up to the sun before the battle and saw a cross of light above it, and with it the Greek words nu tau omicron upsilon tau nu iota kappa alpha, often rendered in a Latin version, in hoc signo vinces. Constantine commanded his troops to adorn their shields with a Christian symbol, and thereafter they were victorious. Following the battle, the new emperor ignored the altars to the gods prepared on the Capitoline and did not carry out the customary sacrifices to celebrate a general's victorious entry into Rome, instead heading directly to the imperial palace. Most influential people in the empire, however, especially high military officials, had not been converted to Christianity and still participated in the traditional religions of Rome. Constantine's rule exhibited at least a willingness to appease these factions. The Roman coins minted up to 8 years after the battle still bore the images of Roman gods. The monuments he first commissioned, such as the Arch of Constantine, contained no reference to Christianity. Edict of Milan in 313. Constantine and Licinius announced that it was proper that the Christians and all others should have liberty to follow that mode of religion which to each of them appeared best, thereby granting tolerance to all religions, including Christianity. The Edict of Milan went a step further than the earlier Edict of Toleration by Galerius in 311, returning confiscated church property. This edict made the empire officially neutral with regard to religious worship. It neither made the traditional religions illegal nor made Christianity the state religion, as occurred later with the Edict of Thessalonica of 380. The Edict of Milan did, however, raise the stock of Christianity within the empire, and it reaffirmed the importance of religious worship to the welfare of the state. Patronage of the Church. The accession of Constantine was a turning point for early Christianity. After his victory, Constantine took over the role of patron of the Christian faith. He supported the church financially, had an extraordinary number of basilicas built, granted privileges to clergy, promoted Christians to high-ranking offices, returned property confiscated during the Great Persecution of Diocletian, and endowed the church with land and other wealth. Between 324 and 330, Constantine built a new imperial capital at Byzantium on the Bosporus, which would be named Constantinople for him. Unlike Old Rome, the city began to employ overtly Christian architecture, contained churches within the city walls, and had no pre-existing temples from other religions. In doing this, however, Constantine required those who had not converted to Christianity to pay for the new city. Christian chroniclers tell that it appeared necessary to Constantine to teach his subjects to give up their rights and to accustom them to despise their temples and the images contained therein. This led to the closure of temples because of a lack of support. Their wealth flowing to the imperial treasure. Constantine did not need to use force to implement this. Only the chronicler Theophanes has added that temples were annihilated, but this was considered not true by contemporary historians. Public office. Many times imperial favor was granted to Christianity by the edict. New avenues were open to Christians, including the right to compete with other Romans in the traditional cursus honorum for high government positions, and greater acceptance into general civil society. Constantine respected cultivated persons, and his court was composed of older, respected, and honored men. Men from leading Roman families who declined to convert to Christianity were denied positions of power yet still received appointments. Even up to the end of his life, 2/3 of his top government were non-Christian. Legal reforms. Constantine's laws enforced and reflected his Christian reforms. Crucifixion was abolished for reasons of Christian piety, but was replaced with hanging, to demonstrate the preservation of Roman supremacy. On March 7, 321, Sunday, the Day of the Sun, was declared an official day of rest in honor of the Roman sun god Sol Invictus. On that day markets were banned and public offices were closed, except for the purpose of freeing slaves. Many Christians had for over 2 centuries been in the practice of worshipping on Sunday, also called the eighth day, in recognition of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, as well as on the traditional Jewish day of worship, the Sabbath. So this act did not change the Christian day of worship so much as it made the day an official imperial holiday. There were, however, no restrictions on performing farming work, which was the work of the great majority of the population, on Sundays. Some laws made during his reign were even humane in the modern sense, possibly inspired by his Christianity. A prisoner was no longer to be kept in total darkness but must be given the outdoors and daylight. A condemned man was allowed to die in the arena, but he could not be branded on his heavenly beautified face, since God was supposed to have made man in his image, but only on the feet. Publicly displayed gladiatorial games were ordered to be eliminated in 325 early Christian Bibles. In 331, Constantine commissioned Eusebius to deliver 50 Bibles for the Church of Constantinople. Athanasius recorded around 340 Alexandrian scribes preparing Bibles for Constans. Little else is known. It has been speculated that this may have provided motivation for canon lists, and that Codex Vaticanus and Codex Sinaiticus are examples of these Bibles. Together with the Peshitta and Codex Alexandrinus, these are the earliest extant Christian Bibles. Christian emperorship. Enforcement of doctrine. The reign of Constantine established a precedent for the position of the Christian emperor in the Church. Emperors considered themselves responsible to the gods for the spiritual health of their subjects, and after Constantine they had a duty to help the Church define orthodoxy and maintain orthodoxy. The Church generally regarded the definition of doctrine as the responsibility of the bishops. The emperor's role was to enforce doctrine, root out heresy, and uphold ecclesiastical unity. The emperor ensured that God was properly worshipped in his empire. What proper worship and doctrines and dogma consisted of was for the Church to determine. Constantine had become a worshipper of the Christian God, but he found that there were many opinions on that worship and indeed on who and what that God was. In 316, Constantine was asked to adjudicate in a North African dispute between the Donatist sect. More significantly, in 325 he summoned the First Council of Nicaea, effectively the First Ecumenical Council. The Council of Nicaea is the first major attempt by Christians to define orthodoxy for the whole Church. Until Nicaea, all previous church councils had been local or regional synods affecting only portions of the Church. Nicaea dealt primarily with the Arian controversy. Constantine himself was torn between the Arian and Trinitarian camps. After the Nicene Council, and against its conclusions, he eventually recalled Arius from exile and banished Athanasius of Alexandria to Trier. Just before his death in May 337, Constantine was baptized into the Arian version of Christianity by his distant relative Arian bishop Eusebius of Nicomedia. During Eusebius of Nicomedia's time in the imperial court, the Eastern Court and the major positions in the Eastern Church were held by Arians or Arian sympathizers. With the exception of a short period of eclipse, Eusebius enjoyed the complete confidence both of Constantine and Constantius II and was the tutor of Emperor Julian the Apostate. After Constantine's death, his son and successor Constantius II was an Arian, as was Emperor Valens. Suppression of other religions. Constantine's position on the religions traditionally practiced in Rome evolved during his reign. In fact, his coinage and other official motifs, until 325, had affiliated him with the pagan cult of Sol Invictus. At first, Constantine encouraged the construction of new temples and tolerated traditional sacrifices. By the end of his reign, he had begun to order the pillaging and tearing down of Roman temples. Persian relations. Beyond the limes, east of the Euphrates, the Sassanid rulers of the Persian Empire, perennially at war with Rome, had usually tolerated Christianity. Constantine is said to have written to Shapur II in 324 and urged him to protect Christians under his rule. With the establishment of Christianity as the state religion of the Roman Empire, Christians in Persia would be regarded as allies of Persia's ancient enemy. According to an anonymous Christian account, Shapur II wrote to his generals, "You will arrest Simon, chief of the Christians. You will keep him until he signs this document and consents to collect for us a double tax and double tribute from the Christians, for our Godhead have all the trials of war and they have nothing but repose and pleasure. They inhabit our territory and agree with Caesar, our enemy. Shepard II, A History of Christianity in Asia. Beginnings to 1500. The great persecution of the Persian Christian churches occurred between 340–363 CE. After the Persian Wars that reopened upon Constantine's death. Constantinian shift. Constantinian shift is a term used by Anabaptist and post-Christendom theologians to describe the political and theological aspects of Constantine's legalization of Christianity in the 4th century. The term was popularized by the Mennonite theologian John H. Yoder.